Okay, let's talk about the end times. I think a lot of us have a general idea of how it's all supposed to play out. But what if a single, crucial detail in that picture is, well, wrong? Today, we're diving into a really fascinating and honestly pretty controversial take on a key event in Christian prophecy. And it's an interpretation that could completely rewrite the end times timeline as many people know it.
So how exactly does this alternative timeline work? Well, here's our roadmap. We'll start with the heart of the debate, the first resurrection. Then we'll dig into the claim that only martyrs get to be a part of it. After that, we're going to explore this really interesting idea of a place of refuge for everybody else. Then we'll put all the pieces together into a brand new timeline. And finally, we'll see how this whole view claims to fix some big theological puzzle.
All right, first up, the first resurrection. Now, this isn't some minor point of theology we're talking about. No, this is a fundamental disagreement that basically sets the stage for everything else that follows in this interpretation. So, this is the question, the big one. The entire argument we're looking at today really hinges on the answer to this. The source we're examining claims that the common answer to this question is a huge mistake, one that causes a whole domino effect of misunderstandings about the end times. This slide really lays it all out, side by side. On the left, you've got what many churches teach. When Christ returns, all believers who have died are resurrected. It's a huge, all-inclusive event. But then, look at the right. This is the source's claim, that the first resurrection is actually a very exclusive event, a special honor that's reserved only for Christian martyrs. So you have to ask, right? Where does such a bold claim even come from? Well, let's actually dig into the scriptural passage that this entire argument is built on. And here it is. The source makes a really compelling point here. It argues that the Bible itself tells us exactly who is in the first resurrection in the one and only passage that uses that specific phrase. And as you can see, it explicitly mentions the souls of those who were beheaded, in other words, martyrs. And this breaks it down even more. According to this interpretation, the text identifies two distinct groups who get to be part of this. The first group are those martyred for their faith throughout history. And the second group, those who were martyred during that future time of crisis, the Great Tribulation, because they refused to worship the beast. But the key takeaway here is that both groups are martyrs. No one else is mentioned. And this is a massive departure from the common view. I mean, think about it. If only martyrs are in that first resurrection, what happens to every other believer who has ever died? Well, according to this interpretation, they wait. They wait for 1,000 years. Their resurrection doesn't happen until the very end of the millennium. Okay, but that immediately brings up a huge question, doesn't it? If the church isn't raptured off the earth before the Great Tribulation, and only martyrs get resurrected, what on earth happens to all the Christians who are still alive during that incredibly chaotic time? The source provides a very specific answer to that question. It's a concept it calls the place of refuge. You can see the Korean term there, yebichu, which literally means prepared place. The idea here is that the church isn't removed from the planet, but is supernaturally protected in a special location on the planet. This is a direct challenge to the popular pre-tribulation rapture theory. And the biblical evidence they point to for this idea comes from Revelation chapter 12. It describes a woman who's often interpreted as a symbol for the church being miraculously taken to a prepared place in the wilderness to be kept safe. And for how long? A time, times, and half a time. That phrase is widely understood to mean 3.5 years, the exact length of the Great Tribulation. So when you start putting these puzzle pieces together, a resurrection only for martyrs and a place of refuge for the living, you end up with a completely different end times timeline. Let's take a look at how this reshuffles the entire sequence of events. This timeline really shows the new flow of things. At the second coming, two major things happen at once. The martyred saints are resurrected to rule with Christ, and the living saints are gathered into that place of refuge. So for 1,000 years, you've got two groups of believers on earth, the immortal martyrs who are ruling and the mortal saints who are living, having families, and populating the earth. It's only after that 1,000-year reign that everyone else who has died is resurrected for the final judgment. Another little wrinkle this interpretation tries to iron out is all the different mentions of trumpets in the Bible. The source argues that people get confused because they think all these trumpets are the same event. But as this table shows, they see them as separate. The trumpets that signal the second coming are different from what they call the last trumpet. That final one, they say, doesn't sound until the millennium is over, kicking off the final resurrection and the transformation of the remaining saints. So you might be thinking, okay, why go to all this trouble to rethink everything? According to the source, this isn't just a mental exercise. They claim this interpretation actually solves some major logical problems that pop up in the more traditional view of the end time. And one of the biggest issues they tackle is a really practical, almost biological question about that 1,000-year millennium. The source points out what it sees as a paradox. If all believers get immortal, resurrected bodies right at the start of the millennium, who's having kids? Who is populating the earth?
And this is really where their argument comes together. On the left, you see the problem. Immortal beings, as far as we know, don't procreate. So how does the earth fill up with people? On the right, you see their solution. The resurrected martyrs rule in immortal bodies, sure, but the saints from the place of refuge are still in their normal physical bodies. This means they can have families, raise children, and actually fulfill all those prophecies about a thriving, populated earth during the millennium.
So just to recap, this slide lays out the journey for pretty much every believer who isn't a martyr in this view. You live your life, you're gathered into the place of refuge when Christ returns, you live through the entire 1,000-year millennium in your physical body, and only then, at the very end, do you finally get your immortal, transformed body. When you step back and look at it, it's pretty wild. This whole explainer really shows the incredible power of interpretation. How we read just a handful of verses in one passage can lead to two completely different visions of the future. It's a powerful reminder of how one ancient text continues to spark such deep, passionate, and diverse beliefs about where we're all headed. It definitely leaves you with a lot to think about.